Good afternoon. This is me, WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. And I'd like to read an announcement before we start our show, and it's WRUU, Savannah Soundings Radio Auction. WRUU is now collecting items for the annual Savannah Soundings fundraising auction. The auction will run from July 15th to July 30th, with proceeds going to WRUU to continue providing both great music and a voice for the Savannah community. Auction items range from gift cards to vouchers for products and services that are guaranteed to delight and surprise. Tell everyone you know about donating and about the auction. Donations can be made now. For information on donation, contact Trent Kissinger at takissinger@gmail.com. Well, once again, good evening. I'm Bill Cooper, your host, and the show is called Savannah at Night. And tonight I have a friend of mine who's a guest that you're really going to enjoy. He's a local comedian, and he's a local singer with an incredible voice. If you haven't had a chance to see or hear him, do yourself a favor, because the purpose of this show is to get people out of the house and out and see what's going on in this city. There are a lot of talented people in this city doing a lot of great things, and by introducing you to them, I hope it inspires you to get out and see them. So let's welcome Rath Nasty, my pal. How you doing, Rath?
Hello, Bill. Hello, everybody. Really quick, I want to say hello to my kids back at home, Jason and Rebecca. I love you. I hope you're having a good time.
Great. Now, let's start off with the comedy, Rath. That's how I know you best.
Yes, sir.
I met you, maybe 4 years ago doing comedy. You've been doing comedy in Savannah longer than that. How long in Savannah have you been doing comedy?
I started just about 6 years ago.
Okay, so you were at it a couple of years before I stepped on the stage. So you get a lot of insight. You're really polished. I'll just call it your act is I don't miss it. You know, if you're there, I'm going to watch you do it because you're just outstanding. You're always coming up with new things. It's a delight to watch you, and the way you pull it off is, you're just one of a kind.
Thank you.
So now, I want to go back to when you first started, and what was the impetus to get you up on the stage to do comedy?
Well, this is a weird story because I'm probably one of the only people who got into stand-up comedy out of spite. And I won't name any names, but there was a local comic that was very braggadocious about his abilities and was constantly telling people how funny he was. And I was kind of tired of hearing that story. So I thought that if I got up at the open mic that he performed at, which was the Sentient Bean, I would do 3 or 4 minutes. I would do better than him, and then I wouldn't have to listen to him brag to me how good he was because he would already know that I was better. So I put together my 3 or 4 minutes, and I went up, and I did very well. And he was having an off night, and I see that I established what I wanted to do, and I figured I'll never do it again. And then somebody came up and just begged me to come out the second time. So a month passed and I went up a second time. And I figured this is the last time I'm going to do it. Somebody asked, I did it. I wrote another 5 minutes. It went over well. And then a man came up and offered me a paid job to do 10 minutes at an actual show. So I put together that 10 minutes. I went up and I did that show. And then he offered me another paid gig. And after a while, it snowballed. And it became a little more than a hobby for me. It became like a second job, like a second career. It's something I really enjoy doing. And so the interest of the public and the interest of the audience kept me interested. And the more feedback I get from people, the more people like me, the more I want to give them, the more I want to write, the more I want to have new content to keep people interested. I don't want people listening to me tell the same joke week after week after week. I want people to come back to me because they're looking for something new. They're looking for a surprise. They want, to be challenged and not just sing along with me a joke they already know.
I find that happens to excuse me to a lot of new comics. They don't challenge themselves enough. They're not writing stuff. If they have something that works and is really funny, that's good. But anyway, excuse me, a little technical problem here, but we're getting it straightened away. Okay, anyway, you have no problem with that. Once again, you've been doing it for 6 years. Some of these new people we work with have been doing it less than a year, and I understand it's a learning curve no matter what you do.
Everyone moves at their own pace.
Right, but you came out of the gate fast, apparently. I wasn't there when you did it, but you came out of the gate fast. Not everyone does, not everyone can. But what I try to do is urge them to keep doing it. If you love it, that's the reason you stepped on the stage in the first place. Just keep doing it. You will figure it out what works for you.
I tell that to all the new people. I said, the thing that you have in common right now with Louis C.K., with Chris Rock, the one thing you have in common is you're still doing it. You're going one step by step, one foot in front of the other. You keep it up. Keep it up. And one of the reasons that I'm able to do what I do is the amount of time I put into it. You can be someone who's done it for 10 years, but if you only write once every 3 or 4 months, you're going to move at that snail's pace. With me, when I have free time, I sit and I think and I write down anything that I think is funny. And then I sit down with those writings. And my secret, or what I call my secret to writing comedy, is I come up with a really good idea and I stretch it as long as I can stretch it. I add so much backstory and preface and prologue to every idea. And once I've got the longest joke I can come up with, then I edit it. Then I just start chipping away the parts that I don't need, and I condense it into it. It's almost like boiling down stock for a bouillabaisse. You take this really long piece and you just take out the best elements and you squeeze that together, and now you've got a really good joke. And then add on to that. And once you've added on to that, squeeze it down. Two of the best things you can do is keep throwing out new ideas. Not every idea works, but if you throw enough ideas at the wall, a few will stick. And the more ideas you throw, the more you will have stick. The other piece of advice is slow down. I heard a famous comic say this: when you're on stage, slow down. Once you've done that, slow down. Make eye contact with someone and then slow down.
That was something I had to learn, because if I told a joke that didn't work or a story that didn't work, I got to thinking about it and I wanted to put something out right away. But maybe they'll like this, maybe they'll like that. And so, and you're absolutely, whether it works or doesn't, you have to find that pause and that pace that works for you.
Because not only do you have to go slow enough that the people will understand what you're saying, once they've heard the words that you've said, their brain needs a few seconds to process it and to understand what you said and the funny element of what you said. Yeah. And if you've already gone on to the next thing, they may not be keeping up with you.
I did a film one time for SCAD. As I say, I've done over 40 of them. So SCAD's the Savannah College of Art and Design here, and they have a film department that's terrific. So I've done several that were comedies. And the thing is that's so much different is, and this was before I did stand-up comedy, so I didn't know what the difference was at the time, is sometimes the crew would start laughing if it was a funny scene or you said something funny. But without audience reaction, it could be great and you don't know. It could be awful, not even working, and you don't know. That's the difference with a film. And I any film that's really funny, and I think my favorite all-time comedy film is My Cousin Vinny. That worked because they put a serious story together with it, and they were able to keep it going, because it is almost impossible to have 2-hour comedy movie that's funny from beginning to end. People don't even want to laugh that long. You have to break it up, and that worked, and I understood that once they did it. But as I'm saying, there was a huge difference. Now, Wrath Nasty, I would like to go back to, you said, okay, you felt challenged. You had you wanted to challenge, we know who. And anyway, so you went on stage for that reason. But when you were young, in your family, growing up, did you have the sense of humor that you have today? Maybe not to this develop, but I mean, did you always have a sense of humor that
I've
you recall?
I've always been a funny kid. I was a funny kid. I loved. We got HBO in the early '70s. I think probably the first year it was available. Anytime there was any kind of stand-up special, I would watch it. I've seen all the Carlins. I would beg to stay up to see Carson just to see the comics. I had no interest in watching him interview Lonnie Anderson. I didn't, care what Loretta Swit had to say. I just wanted to see the comics. And as I, maybe 10 or 11, that's when the big comedy boom in America, where there were comedy clubs everywhere, and there was a ton of it on cable television. TBS had specials, and WGN had specials, and they had show like Caroline's, and Rosie O'Donnell hosted a stand-up comedy show on VH1 back when she had a mullet and she always wore a sequins-covered vest, and she was funny.
What a picture!
She was funny.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
HBO started showing a lot more half-hour comedy hours, and Showtime started showing comedy specials, and then the invention of Comedy Central. I just paid attention to all of it. Also, I've collected stand-up LPs, vinyl, since I was a small child, and they're not all great. Some of them are actually quite lame, but it was just the idea of I was teaching myself. I was learning pacing and character and just how to connect with an audience. And everyone does that in a different way. If you're somebody that really wants to do this, don't think that you have to go up there and be George Carlin. You don't have to be Brian Regan.
You can't.
You can find your own voice. Now, you can. Everybody starts sounding like their favorite person. You can go back and, listen to old Eddie Murphy, where he sounded like Richard Pryor. You can listen to old Chris Rock, where he sounded like Eddie Murphy. There is a couple of YouTube videos of Sarah Silverman, and she's doing Don Rickles word for word. That's who inspired her to do this. And, first time I went up, my very first 5 performances at the Sentient Bean are on my YouTube channel, The Wrath Nasty, and I sounded exactly like Louis Black.
Was that intentional?
No.
Okay, but that's... Yeah.
It was subconscious because sometimes when I think of funny things and I come up with jokes in my head, inside my head, I hear. Sometimes the jokes are told to me by, George Carlin, or sometimes they sound like Louis Black, and sometimes they sound like Louis Anderson. Sometimes they sound like Red Fox. It just depends on the funny nugget, and I have so many comedians' voices in my head because I've listened to it my whole life.
So, okay, to get back to my point there, now, you were funny when you were a kid. Were your parents okay with it, or did they say, hey, enough? I mean, sure, at times everyone heard that. But
I wasn't
did they
really...
encourage you?
I wasn't encouraged to be funny, but I also didn't really get in trouble for being funny. A few times it was mentioned, it's like, we wish you could be like a normal kid, but we understand you're not a normal kid. When I started doing stand-up, I was supported. They really liked the fact that I was doing stand-up.
Good.
I wanted to be a stand-up when I was 16 and 17 years old, and I actually entered a contest in Savannah. This was in 87 or 88, and it was for the funniest man in Savannah. And I had never even been on stage, so it was stupid for me to enter a contest. But I did so poorly, and I was, browbeaten by all the other comics, and basically told me I didn't have it, and I should give up. And I did. I completely gave up and didn't try it again until I was in my 40s.
Well, it's tough when someone doesn't like it. I come up with an idea or something, and I've always been that way. I've always seen the humor of that. I don't know why. I see the opposite of what people are talking serious about, and it goes around in my mind. Oh yeah, but what if it went this way? And I come up with something like that and kind of hit them by surprise. I was never discouraged by my parents, unless, of course, I was just being ridiculous, and and I've always tried never to be insulting to someone. I can make fun of someone, but that was being from up north, that was what you did with your friends. If you weren't making fun of each other, what's the matter with you? You're in a bad mood? I mean, that's the way we operated. The guys on the corner, what are you doing? And, where'd you get those shoes? You got to be kidding me. Does your grandfather know they're missing? That's how we grew up. So it was always something there. And then, as I said before, at school, it was not welcomed, obviously, at school. They were there for another purpose, to teach us, which, I'm thinking I'm learning something really good here. I can make people laugh. This is cool. But they were not into that. And obviously it was discouraging, got me in a ton of trouble, but that was a long time ago, and I was the one that was at fault. I didn't understand the purpose of school, and I don't blame anyone except myself. But it's still, I couldn't wash it out of me just because I stepped on a yellow school bus. I could not wash out the fact that I saw humor in things that people wanted to take serious.
Well, I think my mental process was the same. I think most natural comedians, we're just wired a little differently. We do see things from a different angle. And I can honestly say I grew up in the Midwest. I'm from Oklahoma. And for me, school was the polar opposite of you. My teachers enjoyed my sense of humor. And I wasn't disruptive, but I would do my assignments in the funniest way I could. Anytime I was asked to write something, I would write it in a comedic voice. I loved writing more than anything, and my teachers loved the fact that I was a funny kid and that I wasn't a disruptive kid. So in high school, my funniness, I was not just a class clown, but almost, the school's clown, and almost the town's little clown. And I was allowed to be in, parades, being silly, and I was allowed to be part of the school functions, doing funny things. We would have assemblies cheering on the football team, and I'd come out and, represent the other school and say, "Oh, I don't think you're going to win." And then a member of the football team would hit me with a pie.
Sure.
And I did skits like that, and, working hand in hand with, the principal, who appreciated my sense of humor. And I do want to thank, all the teachers I had and the administrators of our school who didn't squash my creativity. And they would let me come to school in 3D glasses. They would let me come to school wearing funny wigs and acting silly and walking down the hall in flippers, because they appreciated my difference, and that they knew I was a good enough kid that I wasn't going to purposely disrupt. I wasn't trying to cause trouble. Right. They saw, this is a different person. This is an entertainer. Let's let him entertain.
That's the way it should have been taken. As I said, it wasn't when I went to school. It wasn't where I went to school. And I'd like to thank my teachers too for not breaking me, because I wouldn't let them. It's that simple. And I'm not knocking them. They were there for a purpose of academics and succeeding in that department. And at that point, I was too young. I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. And all I know is life should be fun, and they were interrupting with it somehow. Anyway, speaking of that, what you said, you apparently went to a school like Jim Carrey did. I remember him talking about, he had a teacher who said, "Jim, if you behave for a 45-minute class, if you behave, I will give you the last 5, 6, 7 minutes of the class, and you can do what you want." And he said, we had a deal, and I behaved. I kept I did not, because all I would do is crack the kids up, and he said, all I would do is that. So instead, I kept my word, she kept hers, and she let me, and I learned all my impersonations, my silly faces, my thing. And that, I thought, wow, where did you go to school? I know it was Canada, but I would have transferred just to have a teacher like that understood it, that understood that, you have to be yourself. And I wasn't a bad person, I wasn't a mean person. It was just that, something inside me is at work here, and it's at odds with with what you're trying to say?
I don't think it's even a specific school. There are teachers who really appreciate the individuality of children, and I had some teachers who were sticks in the mud, and that's just part of it. But I had a teacher, Mr. Deneen was I think he still lives around here. Daniel Deneen, really great guy, and he appreciated everything I had to say. And if he was teaching us about, the 1600s, and I saw a really cool documentary on TV, he let me stand up and talk about it. He encouraged people to not just do the school work because you had to, but to find enjoyment in what you're learning. I had an art teacher, Mr. Moeller, Chuck Moeller, great guy, still lives around here. If I wasn't interested in making the pottery like everyone else was making pottery, he'd say, all right, what do you want to do? Give me a pitch. And I'd say, well, I'd like to make a huge paper mural of, this comic book I read. And he's like, how long do you think it'd take you? I could do it in 2 weeks. He's like, do that, and I'll grade it under the ceramics. Because he understood, artists have to do what they are inspired to do. And if I wasn't inspired to make a pot, I didn't have to make a pot. And I appreciate that. Every time I see that guy, I tell him how much I appreciated him. I had some great teachers. And I think everybody had at least one who really, reached out to you. And, and I think more and more nowadays teachers are like that,
And once again, I don't want to put a knock on my teachers. They were excellent. They were terrific teachers, but their focus was, academics and, of course, sports. Sports was big in the school I went to, and if you weren't an athlete, you were a second-class citizen. And in fact, they got a pass on. Some of them were bright, and some of them weren't, but they got passed just because they were, making the school look good in the newspaper every weekend. Anyway, that's the way it was. I'm not suing them. No plans on doing it. They're safe. Anyhow, as I say, I was, part of the problem. I'm not one that's saying that bad teachers, good me. Nope, that's not the way it was. I didn't get the right focus. However, as I said, never let it stop me. And the same thing happened when I was working. If something was funny, I'd say it. I would crack the workers up the same as I did. And I loved that feeling. That was a feeling when you can make people laugh and happy. That's one of the best feelings it is. I mean, I can enjoy something and be happy, but if I can make you enjoy it too, that's cool. That's just cool. And I'm glad I, do it. And I'm glad I'm connected with the local comedians here. And Rath, every one of them is different. There's not two that you can say, oh, he reminds me of the other one. They're all different. They all have their own style. They all have their own way of delivery, and they have most of them are very good because they get up there every week and they try sometimes 2, 3, 4 times a week they get up there.
Well, that's the thing. The more you put into it, the more you will get out of it. I am right now, as my job, I am a karaoke guy, and I work a couple nights a week, which gives me so much free time to sit around and work on my act, and not just to write, but once I have something written, I actually physically stand in my living room to nobody, and I go through my act. Right. And I, decide, hey, I might like this word better than that word. Maybe instead of saying brown, I should say mahogany. Mahogany can be a funny word if you say it right, especially if you put like a pause in the middle and go, mahogany. And that's
sound like a French
waiter. It's out of context. It doesn't mean anything.
That's all it is.
But you can find just wording, interesting wording and phrasing.
George Carlin.
George, and that's I get that from George Carlin. Yeah. There's so many aspects of what I do that I get from so many different people. Physically, I do a lot of stuff that Lewis Black does. Sometimes I find myself I kind of have a raspy barking sometimes when I'm talking, and I get that directly from old Bobcat Goldthwait. And I pace on stage a lot like George Carlin, and I also like to repeat my punchline 2 or 3 times, which I get directly from Chris Rock. There's so many aspects of so many different comics and what I do, and by being such an amalgam of so many different people, it makes me different. It makes me unique because I am put together from 75 different people, and I think everyone eventually finds their voice. But I think for the new people, it's just very important to be happy with where you are at the time. A lot of people want to start and be as good as someone who's been doing it for 10 years their first day out, and that doesn't happen for anyone. It just simply doesn't.
In anything. I don't care if you're a mechanic or anything.
You have to practice.
Absolutely. And we know that. Excuse me, we're going to take a quick break here to hear from one of our underwriters. And you're listening to WRUU-LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM. WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
Possible by a grant from Sentient Bean, offering fair trade coffee, vegan and vegetarian food, and breakfast all day. Located at 13 East Park Avenue, across the street from the tennis courts at Forsyth Park. Our menu and special events listings can be found at sentientbean.com.
Okay, we're back now, and I'm Bill Cooper. The name of the show here is Savannah at Night. The purpose of the show is to introduce people in Savannah to some of the extremely talented people we have in this city in the different arts. So each week I'll have someone involved in film or locally or stage acting, poetry, comedy, and tonight we have a very gifted young comedian, my friend Rath Nasty. And okay, Rath, is there anything that you would like to bring up here? Something maybe I haven't asked you?
I just want to encourage anyone who is interested in being a stand-up comic to come out and find us. There's a lot of local open mics. We're at Chuck Bars on River Street every Tuesday night at 9:30. Don't be afraid to try it. People are always asking, what should I do to prepare? How long should I wait before I try it? Don't wait. Get up, try it once just to see what it feels like. It is, I hate to say this, but it is like an addiction of some kind. You do get hooked on it. It's something that you want because just the rush you get from an audience, people appreciating you. I've been doing music most of my adult life, and as much admiration as you can get as a musician, it doesn't compare to what you get as a comic when people laugh, because what you are presenting is yourself. You are speaking stuff that you came up with from your mind, and you are just presenting yourself as a person in front of strangers. And when they accept you by clapping and laughing and telling you that they appreciate you, they like you, there's no better feeling than that.
Absolutely. Now, I didn't start stand-up comedy until I was 69 years of age. So there's no special age you should get up there. But don't wait that long, folks. That's not my point. Is, if you, as Raz said, if you want to do it, do it. Okay, I'm going to switch gears a bit now because you have a very interesting musical life you can tell us about. So, Rath, you just take it from wherever you want to start on it.
Well, I've been doing music between karaoke and being in various bands since 1989. And right now I'm doing karaoke, 2 bars twice a week. I'm at the Rail Pub at 10 o'clock on Tuesday nights. I'm at Totally Awesome Bar at 10 o'clock on Thursday nights. And I enjoy singing very much, and I enjoy having people come out and singing with us. Karaoke sometimes gets a bad rap and sometimes is laughed at. But for me, there's a lot of people who really, truly enjoy performing and they enjoy singing, and their life did not lead them in that direction. They got a real job. They have families. They have responsibilities. And it doesn't mean they're not a performer inside. It doesn't mean that they can't go out there and express themselves. And I love for people to come in and surprise me with just an amazing ability. Some people have abilities that they don't even really know about. You can become a good singer simply by going to karaoke because it's your practice. It's like someone that gets up and runs in the morning 3 or 4 times a week. If you come out to a bar and you sing in front of people 2 or 3 times, even once a week, that is practice. You are strengthening your vocal cords. You are strengthening the muscles. And you will get good. You will get better. I haven't always been the best singer. As when I was young, I was considered, tone deaf.
Excuse me 1 second. Let me interrupt here. Now, I'm just speaking honestly. I have heard you sing, and you have an amazing voice. You really do. You have a voice that's different, same as your comedy, but it's strong, and wow, you can nail a song. You can really drive people to the wall with it. And that's all I'm saying is anyone who hasn't heard you, I'm telling you, you're missing out on a treat if you have not heard this man sing.
Well, thank you. But to my point, it's practice. I've been a professional vocalist for 28 years. That's how you get to that level. It's just doing the same thing over and over again. If you make an omelet every morning in 30 years, you are a master omeletier. You make
Not true with everyone.
If you do the same thing over and over and over, you will master that thing, whatever you decide to do.
Unless you're happy with mediocrity, and then it will be mediocre.
That's true. The only way you don't improve is if you are completely satisfied with where you are and you don't try anymore.
Right. Okay, now let's go back to the beginning in your music. Tell us about the band you were with and the type of music you played, the people you met. This is interesting.
I was with the Big Nasty, and we played what was popular at the time, a lot of 90s alternative, almost to the point of grunge, but not quite, because flannel is too warm for me. I can't wear it. I mostly t-shirts and pajama pants. That's just me. And played a lot of covers, wrote a lot of original stuff. Never got super famous, but accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, which was I could go out in the evenings and I could perform for audiences, and the audiences appreciate, the music they heard. And met a lot of people along the way, some very interesting people, some not so interesting people. I feel like I'm telling the same stories that everyone's told. Alice Cooper is a much smarter man than anyone gives him credit for. He's very intellectual. Mark McGrath, very nice guy, nicer than, a lot of the rumors I've heard. John Popper is one of the most talented people I've ever heard. Very verbose, very smart. Peter Noon is one of the nicest human beings on the planet.
Oh, but quick thing on Peter Noon. One time, a long time ago, the first station in Boston that went 24 hours, television station, was Channel 5 up there. And they had a show called 5 All Night. They'd play old Sherlock Holmes movies, and then they'd talk, and the guy that ran it. And anyway, one night he says, and I guess tonight is Peter Noon. Peter Noon, of course, the heck is his group? I can't think.
Lead singer of Herman's Hermits.
Right, Herman's Hermits. Peter Noon will be here. And say, I like Herman's Hermits. This will be great. I'm going to stay up later, even though I have to work tomorrow. I'm going to listen to Peter Noon. And about a half hour later, he said, well, a special guest, Peter Noon tonight, should be here any minute now. This went on all night, and he never came in. So, but it wasn't Peter Noon's fault. It wasn't his fault. What happened was the only other person in the studio, I guess, besides the engineer, was the guard. And when Peter Noon rings the bell at 1 o'clock in the morning, he told him to get lost. He said, I'm supposed to be on the show. He said, no, we have a show. He says, ask the guy that's running the show. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. Bye. And that was it. He tried. I never got to hear Peter Noon being interviewed in Boston. All because the guard says, no way, Jose.
Well, he's a very personable human being, and actually personally inspiring. The way he treats his fans is the way that, I think everyone should treat their fan base, and definitely the way I want to treat my fan base. He gets to know people on an individual basis. My mother's a huge fan, and he knows her name. He knows her name when he sees her. He knows my name. He is just the friendliest person, and he loves to get to know individuals who are fans of his. And that's why anytime anyone comes up to me and wants to talk about my music or wants to talk about my comedy, I'm happy to do it. And I want to say the same thing with up-and-coming comics. I know, being a stand-up, you really are an island unto yourself. You're working for yourself. You're trying to get your name out there. But at the same time, I do like working as a community here in Savannah with our group of comedians. And I'm willing, I have my hand out. Anyone that wants help, anyone that wants to sit down and write, anyone that wants help with editing, anyone that just wants to discuss stage performance, just wants to discuss, finding their voice, or wants to discuss, technical things of how to properly use a microphone, what to do if there's feedback, where you should stand, how you find your light. I am happy to discuss any of that with anyone that's interested. You can find me on Twitter at WrathNasty, one word. WRATHNASTY. And I'm more than happy to help the next level of people coming up.
That's what I love about, as you say, our group. Everyone roots for everyone else. No one, I think I'm glad to be associated with such a good bunch of people that support each other and like each other. And that, I want to get back to the music again, because I think you skimmed over what you did, but I think tell us about maybe an experience you had with the band, and maybe, I don't know, backstage or something that didn't work and should have, or something that went over great.
To be honest, it's cool when to go out and tour and you get to see a lot of different places, but at the same time, sometimes the bars all kind of meld together. You feel like you're in the same place every night. The hotels seem to, you're all, all the Holiday Inns are pretty much the same and nice, but, from state to state, place to place, sometimes you kind of feel like you're seeing the same thing over and over again. And so that's why it is cool when something, exciting would happen, like a very odd occurrence, but I got to meet Prince. And the weird thing is nobody, I've heard this said before, but it is completely honest. You are never prepared to meet Prince. Never. Not if you know for 3 years that on this date you'll meet Prince. You won't be ready to meet Prince.
So what happened, Ray?
The band was playing in a little country bar in Oklahoma City called In Cahoots. It is exactly what you think. It's got a track for line dancing. There is a enormous inflatable boot out in front of the bar. It is very much a country bar, but they hired all kinds of bands. And we were a rock band, and we were there for a couple of months, and we were just opening for whoever the main band was going to be. And during the week, we were the main band. We would be doing 2 hour-and-a-half long sets every weekday night, Monday through Thursday. And then on the weekends, we would open for whoever came through town. And so I believe it was a Tuesday or a Wednesday night. This is many years ago. I'm going to approximate either 92 or 93 in the summer. And we were preparing to go on, and the manager / owner of the bar came into the back and said, "Listen, you're going to get your full pay for the evening, but you are only doing the first set." And I said, "Oh, you have a bigger band coming through tonight?" He said, "Yeah, Prince is going to be here." And I said, "No, he's not.
Of course.
Prince is not going to play In Cahoots in Oklahoma City at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday. It's not going to happen." He said, "I've been contacted by management. Apparently, when he plays big shows," and he was playing the Civic Center. Well, it wasn't called the Civic Center in Oklahoma City. It was called the Myriad Center. And he was playing that night. And what he likes to do for his band, as a tip, to tip his band, he would like to set up an after show at a small club, and then he would give all of the money. He would charge $20 at the door till they filled capacity. He would give all of that money to his band
That's great.
as a tip, and he
Nice.
did that all over the country.
Yeah, that's interesting. And do you have a time to say hi to him or meet him at?
Well, we got up, did our set. We're backstage. None of us believe he's coming. None of us believe he's there.
Who would?
And then we're told that he's coming through the back. They moved him into the green room. And they tell me he's in the green room. I don't believe he's in the green room. And then I'm asked to go into the green room. And I do. And there is sitting a beautiful, tiny, young Puerto Rican woman. Turned out to be Prince. And tiny. He was, I don't know officially how tall he was. I'm guessing 5 foot even, maybe 5'2".
Yeah.
And he said, what's your favorite song? I said, of yours? He said, of course of mine. What's your favorite song? I said, my favorite song is I Can Never Take the Place of Your Man, off A Sign of the Times. And he said, if you introduce the band, I will let you sing that song with me as our first song. And I was over the moon. I couldn't believe it.
Who wouldn't be?
And I said, I would love to. He said, but you have to introduce them exactly the way I tell you to.
Sure.
I said, I'll say anything you want. And he says, I want you to introduce, ladies and gentlemen, the new power generation. I said, you don't want me to tell them who you are? He said, they know who I am. And it was possibly the greatest experience of my life. I got to sing my favorite Prince song with Prince. I got to introduce the new power generation, which as a band, a lot of people don't remember. It was after the revolution. And yeah, it was great. And, and the next night we're back in cahoots, playing in front of a booth.
I didn't sing with Johnny Cash, but I met him twice, shook his hand, smiled, and asked him for his autograph. And this was back in the early 60s when they were approachable. There weren't some cuckoos shadowing them and stalking them and that. So, you could go right up to them after a show and, wait a few minutes and get an autograph and talk with them. It was super, but it was Johnny Cash. He was big then in the 60s, and, still today. He'll always be big. And it was a thrill, although he did not ask me to sing with him. And I know a certain karaoke Jay who won't let me sing with him. I ain't mentioning
For the
any
record,
names.
Bill Cooper does a very good Johnny Cash, but he does a better Buddy Holly.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. And okay, so we're getting ready to wrap up here. Another couple minutes. Once again, is there anything you'd like to mention that I haven't touched on?
I just want to encourage everyone to come out to all of the open mics and the showcases and the feature shows all around Savannah. Next Friday night, they got a comedy show at Stafford's down right off of River Street. I think that's at 10 o'clock. We're going to have some really great local comics there. We always got the open mics. Mondays is Molly McPherson's, and Tuesdays is Chuck's, and Wednesdays is Total Awesome Bar. And I'm at Totally Awesome Bar every Thursday night doing karaoke, and I'm also at the Rail Pub every Tuesday night doing karaoke. I'd love to see everybody out there. Once again, on Twitter, at WrathNasty, I would like to hear from anyone. I am more than happy to help anyone or just to discuss anything you wanted to discuss. I'm here for the community. And once again, I want to thank Bill Cooper for putting this out there so we can reach out to everybody.
Thank you very much, Rath. It just has been terrific having you here. He's right. He will talk to anyone. He's just that kind of a all-around good guy. Well, boy, this flew by. And again, thank you, WRUU, for having this show. And I'd like to read one more time that WRUU Savannah Soundings Radio Auction. WRUU is now collecting items for the annual Savannah Soundings fundraising auction. The auction will run from July 15th to July 30th, with proceeds going to WRUU to continue providing both great music and a voice for the Savannah community. Auction items range from gift cards to vouchers for products and services that are guaranteed to delight and surprise. Tell everyone you know about donating and about this auction. Donations can be made now. For information on donation, contact Trent Kissinger at takissinger@gmail.com. We are WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.